Hello, this is Ron McCullough, consultant podiatric surgeon. So we've sent you a video explaining your gait analysis results, but it's well worth watching this video first because it will provide you with a much better explanation as to the results of your gait and what it all really means. So some of the questions we're asked quite frequently about the gait include things like, well, if I'm walking on a treadmill, is this like walking on a real surface? And surely there's going to be differences. And the answer to that is absolutely. You are going to have potentially a different cadence because we decide how fast or how slow you walk. And there's also going to be some differences in the length of your step and so on. But the key point is that the key things that we look at, like the symmetry of your gait, the stability, and the pressures and forces don't change that much. And we know that because we assess in both ways. We can assess patients in very sophisticated ways, both with pressure systems and also movement systems. And we can do that either in a natural environment, walking down the street, or by treadmill. But treadmill can be sometimes more convenient, and we just pick and choose according to what's appropriate for the patient. So whatever type of assessment you have, that will have been determined by what we think is best for you. When it comes to movement analysis, which is called 3D or observational, there are two types. So you can either watch somebody, video them, slow them down, and that will give you a lot of good quality information to explain what's happening. But also you can have 3D where we can measure movement. And the assessment you have will depend on what's required and sometimes also on what's financially viable or what is covered by your insurance company. But fundamentally, we will use what's required to get you where we need you to be in terms of understanding the dynamic factors that have resulted in your problem. And then the third thing is force and pressure. We have very specialized force and pressure systems, both hundreds of sensors that we put inside the shoe and also specialist mat systems that allow us to evaluate your gait in a very scientific manner. So just a little bit about the Loom video. This is the software, and in fact this is a Loom video, so you can even do what I'm going to talk about now on this video. You can slow me down. If you go to the ×1, it usually says you can choose ×8, and then as a result my speech will be slower, which can be useful because despite my best efforts I can talk a bit quickly. Also you have a transcript section here which goes to the text. Everything that I say is available in text form. And you can then scroll to the bit of text you're interested in, and it will also take you to that bit of the video. So this is a very user-friendly way of getting information to my patients about what's happening with gait, and I think it's a great improvement from simply writing a long report. So the question is, so we've got all of these amazing technologies to measure force and pressure, and incidentally we pretty much have the most advanced gait facility anywhere in the country within podiatry, within podiatric clinics. You really only see our technology in some of the big universities. But what are we trying to achieve with gait analysis? Well, clearly you've come to us for a reason, so we're going to want to resolve your concern, whether that's pain of the foot, of the shin, of the knee, of the back, of the hip. But you know, that is always going to be a key priority, but it's not at all secondary to improving your general efficiency. We want to make you biomechanically better. We want to make you function and walk in a better way. Why do we want to do that? Because it promotes long-term health. There are recognized parts of the aging process, in particular sarcopenia, where you get muscle wastage, which are very detrimental to our quality of life and how long we live. The stronger they are and the better and efficient our gait, the more likely we are to live a healthy lifestyle and to be less susceptible to falls. When you look at falls, for example, 76,000 hip fractures per year, which is obviously a huge number, and that's a cost of $2 billion to the NHS. And the sad thing, unfortunately, is that about 30% of patients don't really get out of hospital or live more than a year following injuries like that. So we really want to avoid them. We avoid them by keeping our gait efficient. There are lots of studies that show that once your gait slows down and becomes inefficient, you are far more likely to fall, and there is a direct correlation between how efficiently you walk and how long you're going to live. So counting your steps and being efficient and walking is one of the best forms of exercise, and I see it as my function and the function of our center to facilitate that and to keep you going. So we never just look at the immediate problem, we try and generally enhance your gait through rehabilitation, through special appliances, through shoes, through orthotics, through rehabilitation, through manipulation. It just depends on what's required. So why have I shown you a picture of a cream cake and a rather fancy sports car? Well, the reason for that is that we often get asked the question by patients, why, if I have a leg length difference and you've just discovered that, why is that relevant when I haven't had problems for the last 20, 30, 40 years? And these pictures really illustrate a point, which is if you eat cream cakes for 50 years, for the first 20 or 30 years, you're probably not going to have any issues. But eventually you're going to end up with heart disease or high blood pressure. You obviously didn't have that at the age of 20. And the reason for that is because of the cumulative effect. It's the same analogy as a car. If you have a car that excuse me, has a twisted axle or something that's not quite right, you're probably not going to notice that for the first 50,000 miles or 40,000 miles, but eventually that car is going to go wrong. When it does, that will be the reason. So the effects of an inefficient gait, of having a mechanical imbalance, and it could be absolutely anything, take time to manifest. Our job is to find them early and to avoid some of the possible sequelae and complications from that. So definitely we deal with the cause, we deal with your concern, but we want to improve your global gait and efficiency so that you can live a long, healthy life, hopefully without injuries relating to your gait. So the three things we look at in that respect are the three pillars of gait. So we look at movement, we look at force, and we look at balance. Movement we can measure with our specialist 3D systems or with our gait facilities, and force we can measure by putting sensors inside the shoe or using a mat system that will allow us to measure pressures and force in a very sophisticated way. Balance, again, we use a mat system to actually facilitate and measure balance. So what are we looking at and what are we trying to achieve? Well, the first thing we look at are the pressures normal under your foot. I don't just mean how high they are, but are they distributed normally? The second one is the direction of pressure. We call this the center of pressure trajectory. Is that normal? And then finally, the total force, the total load going through your body via your foot. Is that efficient? Is that normal? So the first bit I talked about, when we look at the amount or the distribution and amount of pressure, we want the pressure to be about the same between A, B, and C. Okay, and the duration is also reasonably similar, a bit shorter on A. Ideally, we don't want the pressures to be too high. If they're over 200 kilopascals, we start to worry about tissue stress and potential rise of conditions of pathology, whether that be forefoot pain, mortis neuroma, metatarsalgia, etc. The other thing we look at is the center of pressure line. So the center of pressure is the average position of the pressure. So on a seesaw, if these kids were completely balanced equally at equal height, the pivot point would be the center of pressure. This surfer can only stand on his surfboard because he's maintaining the center of pressure so he doesn't fall off. We know the center of pressure line should be a certain length. Well, and also we know it should be the same length between the left and the right foot. But also we know it shouldn't deviate outward or inwards. And we have these measurement calculations. And by ensuring the center of pressure is normal, we can optimize your gait efficiency. So clearly, if the patient simply had a problem underneath their second toe joint, we might want to get the pressures down if they were high, but we're not going to just look at that. We're going to look at center of pressure and we're going to look at force time. So here's a force time curve. So this basically should be an M-shaped curve. The first peak is your heel making contact. Then the second peak is your forefoot making contact. And when you're standing about in the middle, you're in this part. So we want to see an M-shaped curve. Here's a patient with a little bit of asymmetry. It's not severe. Clearly, it's not that efficient either because there are differences in height of the curve. It's not quite M-shaped. The blue looks better. Obviously, one is left and one is right. If we look at this one, it's still not perfect, but there's perfect symmetry. So we're going to be much happier with this curve than that curve. So these are things that we try to optimize as part of your gait treatment. Another thing we look at is the proprioceptive capabilities of the patient. And we measure this by something called postural sway. So when you stand still, you will sway a bit. Now, if you can imagine this chap with the pencil sticking out of his head, and even when he's standing still, he's going to create a squiggle on that piece of paper. we can measure the area of that squiggle, we can measure the length of that squiggle, and by doing that we can determine whether the movement is excessive. Now this is a really important test. If you have excessive sway, it's an indicator that you have a potential increased risk of falling. If you're elderly and it's particularly out, you have a reduced efficiency, you're more likely to be unstable, you're more likely to sprain your ankle, etc. So we look at this, we know that 35 centimeters in terms of length is normal. So if the result is 50 or 40, we'd be concerned about that and we'd want to deal with that. Obviously we would deal with that by giving you balance awareness exercises. Which leads me on to the other thing, is what can we do about this? It's all very well measuring all of this in great detail, but how can we actually improve gait? Well, first of all, there's gait re-education, but by that I mean put right what's wrong. If the right foot is weak and collapsed, strengthen the right foot. If the left calf is tight, stretch the calf muscle on the left side to make it less tight so that you don't have an early heel lift. If the hip is weak, strengthen it so you don't get hip drop. We have all sorts of specific training and strengthening programs, and different things suit different people, and different patients need different things. Some patients may need manipulation. A personal trainer might be perfect for them in a gym. Some might need a specific Pilates orientated physiotherapy. And we can obviously work with rehabilitation specialists, which we have on site, and we work with many to help with this. In the same way, footwear can have a profound effect on gait. The shoes are now so sophisticated, and often you can actually majorly correct a gait abnormality, for example in a runner, simply by picking the right shoe. And we spend a lot of time testing shoes and making sure that the shoe that you have is optimal. The other thing is foot orthoses. These are specialist inserts. We take 3D scans of the foot. The scans are sent to the laboratory, and we can make devices that can optimize the center of pressure, that can get those pressure distributions correct, and that can make that force time curve much more normal. And that's a key element of our treatments. We can also use other appliances, whether it be braces. This is functional electronic stimulation, is just where we stimulate a nerve to allow the foot to function and therefore the body to function better. But sometimes I have to operate. Sometimes the pain is causing the dysfunction in gait, and as a result, the patient needs an operation, whatever that might be. And so in that respect, the surgery will allow for normal gait by stopping them from actually walking in a way that's protective and that stops gait from being optimized. So in terms of rehabilitation, we have specialist physiotherapists on site. We also have many practitioners that we work with, and sometimes even an online session can be helpful for the patient. And finally, we also recommend specific stores that we think are going to be good for patients to get their shoes from. So specialist general shoe stores such as Precious Soles. For tennis, we recommend Wigmore Street, Wigmore Sports, and Run and Become for running shoes. And we'll give you lots of recommendations according to what's required. So I hope this video is useful. It will allow you to have a much better understanding of the gait report that is to follow. And that video will provide a detailed explanation of the reason why you have your problems and what we're going to do to put you right. Thank you.